Today, we are talking about one of my favorite topics in the performance world, which is diet and how your diet affects your mental performance. If you have seen my videos enough, you know how much I emphasize the importance of optimizing your body. I'm a naturopathic doctor. You got to have the mind body approach here. And so many of us, when we are trying to achieve our peak mental performance, we really underestimate the impact of our body and the dysfunctions in our body and how they can affect our ability to show up. They affect our ability to be motivated, to be concentrated. And all of these important brain functions are dependent on the functioning of the rest of our body. So if you are really serious about healing your brain, stepping into your full potential, you really have to step outside of the mind. And one of the most important areas for you to look at and get serious with is your diet. That is by far one of the most important areas that you need to address, look at, and really it's about making sure that you are giving your body the right tools so that you can show up in the world the way that you want to. Too many of us are doing the visualizations, the positive affirmations, and all this other mental stuff, but we're doing it in a body that's dysfunctional. And what ends up happening is that when you try to show up in your peak mental performance in a dysfunctional body, it's like an uphill battle, and it just constantly feels like you are failing because you are putting this mind in any body that just doesn't work well. So, to really highlight the importance of your diet and how it affects your mental performance, I'm actually going to be taking you through a very recent research study. It looked at a ton of participants. I have the notes of the research study kind of written up on my computer screen right now. So if you see me not looking at you and I'm kind of looking a little bit down, it's because I'm reading my notes because I refuse to memorize. Okay. Kudos to all the YouTubers that do that. I refuse to memorize all the intricacies and details of a research study. I'm trying to make this be as simple as possible so that I can consistently show up for you all. Okay, so essentially, with this research study, what I really want to highlight is that there's a clear link between diet and brain health and mental performance. And sometimes I get so frustrated because I'm just like, why do we need research studies to tell us that, right? But in the science world, it's not true and real until we have a research study to back that up. So if you aren't fully convinced that you need to optimize your diet for peak mental performance, I really hope that at least by the end of this video, you do realize that connection. And that through this research study, I'm going to take you through, I'm really going to highlight some of the foods that they found that showed that people who, are performing better than others, they had these specific food groups. So you'll get some ideas on the things that you do need to optimize in your diet and life moving forward. Okay. So when it comes to this research study, and I will link the study in the bio of this video, just so that you have it with you if you want to refer to it afterwards. So this research study essentially looked at 181,990 participants from the UK's biobank. Okay. And essentially what they were doing with these people is that they were looking at their genetic factors, they were looking at images of their brain, they were looking at their markers of their blood, cognitive function, and these are just some of the things that they were looking at and comparing with these people to see what are the specific traits of the ones that had just better mental performance. Now, what's important to note, and they stated that in this study, is that previous research has shown that people who like a Western type diet, so that's preferring the high sweet, high fatty foods and not really preferring plant-based foods, do tend to have a higher incidence of depression, Other research studies have also shown that protein intake does enhance executive function and working memory. And studies have also found that the Western diet disrupts the gut microbiota, which causes inflammation. And we know that there's such a strong link with gut microbes, brain health. And other studies have also found the fact that simple carb consumptions can lead to overall effect on cognitive performance. So there have been previous studies that have found these links. Okay, so that's important to essentially take note of and look at. And so what they did in this research study with all these hundreds of thousands of participants is that they essentially divided people up into 4 different subtypes. Okay, so let's go through what the subtypes were. So subtype number 1 in this research study, they grouped these people because they had a starch-free or a reduced starch dietary pattern. Okay. Subtype number 2 was the vegetarian dietary pattern. Subtype number 3 was high protein and low fiber. Okay, so high protein, low fiber dietary pattern. And then subtype number 4 had a balanced dietary pattern. So kind of all the different types of food groups, more of like that balanced dietary pattern. Now, what this study found is that there were differences in mental health across all 4 subtypes. So essentially they took those like approximately 180,000 people, and they divided up all those people up and put them into the categories of these 4 different subtypes. And essentially what this study kind of found is that your diet can affect the plasticity and the adaptability of your brain, and that food preferences have distinct patterns of brain MRI traits. So I think that on its own is really fascinating, right? Is that, again, I'm not surprised by this, like obviously, but going back to this, your diet can affect the plasticity and adaptability of the brain. So that means that the foods that you give your brain, that you give your body, can affect your brain's ability to adapt to things, to change to things in your environment. And that's really important, right? If you are someone who is looking at how to be in your peak mental state, or just generally, if you are someone who's looking at how to work on overcoming negative thoughts and emotions, how to work on overcoming certain things that trigger you in your life, how to just become mentally strong, that's going to require some pathways in your brain to change and your brain to make new pathways and learn how to cope and work through situations in a different way. And so if you want to have a brain that's more plastic and adaptable, looking at your diet becomes extremely, extremely important. Like, I cannot highlight that enough. You need to make sure you're giving your brain the right foods and nutrients so that your brain can rewire, build new pathways, new cells, and your brain is totally capable of doing that. You're not just born with the brain that you have. Your brain can change and adapt and grow and learn. So pretty fascinating, and having the right diet can significantly support your brain. So going through the mental health differences across the 4 different subtypes. So subtype number 2. So this was the subtype that followed a more vegetarian diet. Okay. So these people essentially, right? Usually people that tend to eat a more vegetarian diet, you kind of hope they're having more vegetables and fruits. Now, what was very interesting is that they found that this subtype number 2 that was eating more vegetables and fruits, they had higher levels of mental health scores, right? I want to completely lay it all out for you honestly in the study. And they found that people who were in the subtype number 2 had higher levels of mental health scores in terms of anxiety, depression, mental distress. And what they did conclude, and I think this is important here, right? Because I don't want you to think that, oh, I thought this whole video was about eating healthier and better, and aren't fruits and vegetables healthy and better? And now the first thing you're telling me is that the study said people who had more fruits and vegetables had higher mental health scores and anxiety and depression. So what I really want you to keep in mind here, right? Because I mean, I could easily hit this back, but I'm like, no, this is a study and I want to share this stuff with you honestly. And so it is a bit controversial, the association between vegetarian and vegan diets, right? Because there's been a huge movement over towards a more plant-based eating pattern, right? And that being shown to be healthier. What they did find here is that there was people in subtype number 2 did have a higher genetic susceptibility to anxiety, depression, and mental distress. So I think that's important to note that this subtype specifically had a higher genetic susceptibility to these. The other piece too to keep in mind is that a lot of people don't do vegan, vegetarian diets right. A lot of people don't. So they might be eating more plants and vegetables, but they usually oftentimes are not getting enough protein, and they might be missing out on some very key nutrients like B vitamins, very important for mental health. Protein is very important for mental health. Omega-3 is important for mental health. And so oftentimes what I've seen in my private practice is that a lot of people who are vegan, vegetarian, they're not doing it right. They're not supplementing themselves right. And as a result of that, they're actually missing out on a lot of key nutrients. So important to note, okay? Subtype number 3. So this was the one that had high protein and low fiber. They also indicated that this subtype had lower well-being scores. They're saying that this is because they had a higher intake of fatty meat, which has been linked to elevated stress levels due to inflammation, permeation of the gut flora. And then they found that subtype number 4, so that was the one with the balanced diet. And sorry, before I continue to subtype number 4, what's important to note is that subtype number 3 had high protein, but they also had low fiber. And fiber is a very important component of our health and diet. It's important for our gut flora, important to get toxins out, have those healthy bowel movements. And so not having enough fiber can also be a reason as to why subtype number 3 had lower well-being scores. And what they found is that subtype number 4, which was the one that had the balanced diet, had the best mental health score, had the least mental health problems, essentially. And they're saying that that is because they focused on having that balanced intake of various food categories, right? So concluding that essentially kind of leads to the best mental health. Now, other important pieces to keep in mind here. Subtype number 2, which was the vegetarian diet, they had the highest genetic susceptibility to mood disorders. So I think that's important to take note of, right? There is a little bit of genes and genetics that plays a role here. And if you combine that with a person who's vegan and vegetarian and they're not doing it right and getting the right nutrients, that can really set you up for a little bit of chaos, right? Subtype number 3, they found that their mood symptoms were more so related to their dietary patterns. And then they found that subtype number 4, their positive responses were due to their dietary patterns. So the other pieces that they found too is that in subtype number 3, so that was the high protein, high fiber, the people specifically in this category who ate more vegetables had higher gray matter volume in the brain. So your gray matter of the brain is actually considered your brain's cells. And your cells are the areas of your brain that, store things, essentially. And so the subtype number 3 who had diets high in saturated and trans fat actually had smaller levels of gray matter volume. So interesting to take note, right? It's that vegetable component combined with the protein potentially that really supported the brain health in the gray matter volume piece of things. Now, the other biomarker here that they looked at that I think it's very important for you to understand is that they also looked at omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. So these omega-3s are very important because when you look at your cell, right, your cells are surrounded, maybe I'll go this way. Your cells are surrounded by a membrane. And essentially, we want the membranes of your cells to be fluid. And the reason we want them to be fluid is because we want toxins to be able to leave, and we want nutrients and other things to be able to go into the cells. And when you have healthy fats like omega-3s that make up this cellular membrane, the membrane stays fluid so that things can come in and things can leave and get out. Now, if you have a diet that's high in saturated fat, trans fat, and the not so good fats, what happens is that this membrane becomes rigid, which means that toxins can't effectively leave your cells and nutrients and other healthy foods can't get into your cells. So you want to have more omega-3s essentially in your diet and the healthy fats. And not just that too, they're important components in serotonin synthesis, which is your happiness hormone. And what they found is that subtype number 2, which was the vegan vegetarian, which I've talked about already, and also subtype number 3, which was the high protein, low fiber diet, had lower biomarkers of omega-3 fatty acids, which was probably due to the lack of consumption of fish. So although subtype number 3 was high protein, they were getting most of their protein from meats, and it seemed like a lot of it was red meat. So, what is essentially the conclusion of this study? The conclusion is that the healthier diet with balanced food preferences, right? So, in various food categories, was associated with the best mental health status. And they also found that genetic associations and susceptibilities underlying these dietary patterns can also play a big role in regulating brain function. So, for example, right, in this study, they talked about how the vegan vegetarian subtype, a lot of those people tended to have genetic susceptibilities, specifically in this subtype, to mood disorders. So combined with that vegan vegetarian diet, and if they weren't probably doing it right, that can really set someone up for a mood disorder, and it can really wreak havoc on their brain health. So I think that this is really, really important to take note of. And it's not to say, again, that your genes are going to be everything, but if you are someone who potentially has mood disorders running in your family, then I think it just highlights the importance, and it becomes that much more important to make sure that you are supporting your brain with the right nutrients and the right food. And I think it's fascinating overall that this study was done at such a large scale, just to really highlight that link again, that yes, there is a link between the foods you eat and your ability to show up in the world. And I want you to even take note of this yourself. How do you feel after you eat a big heavy meal? Probably not the best, right? You might feel slow and sluggish, like you can't think clearly, like you can't really do much, and you don't want to do much. Like, I don't know about you, if I have a cheeseburger, I am done. Donesies for the day. That's why I have to be so mindful of the foods I eat, especially in the morning and in the afternoon, because those are the most important times of the day where you need a lot of your energy to perform, to show up. And if you're not feeding your body the right foods, it literally becomes impossible to show up in the world the way that you want to. So this is a study. If you are, we're still questioning the link between diet and your brain health and your ability to show up, I really hope that the study is kind of showing you that there really is a link, and you really do need to get super serious about the foods that you are putting in your body. If you want support with your brain health, if you are ready to really unlock your potential and you want that holistic support with the mindset and the nutrition and the movement and the sleep and the supplements and all of that, I would recommend book a free 30-minute discovery call with me. It's just always blows my mind how incredible life can feel and how quickly you achieve your goals when you learn to work with your brain health and support yourself. Like, just always, always, always blows my mind. So reach out if you want help and support. And I hope that this video really opened your eyes up to the fact that there is a pretty big link between diet and mental performance.